I'm Danielle with Stitch and Designs. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have another tutorial for you for the Pimp My Mav series. We are going to be doing the ITA head wig. This is the Mav pack. It is done at 120%. This pattern is from Lynn's Handmade. So check out this head wig. It is so stinking cute. I absolutely love it. Super adorable. So the pattern includes everything, including the wings. Of course, like the hardware and the webbing for the straps is going to be separate, but it includes these cute little pieces for it, and of course the little vinyl on the sides. This bag is only available in the pebbled vinyl, and then it has a cotton woven lining. On this one I do a couple modifications. In the video I show you on this one how to save a little bit of hardware and attach directly onto here, but I do demonstrate or mention how to do the strap per the original instructions. So inside we are going to be doing a binding method on this. So you can see here we have a zipper pocket here to be able to access the ITA pocket for the pin board, and then on the inside it's a little bit hard to tell, but I have a zipper pocket, and all the way tucked down in there, probably hard to see, is another slip pocket. So there's a slip pocket and a zipper pocket on the inside, so that's a little bit different than the pattern. And then in the video that I teach you how to do the pin board, the pin board fabrics and everything that goes along with the pin board is done separately, so you'll need to have your own fabric for that, but I will have that for you and show you how to do that one at the very end of the video. I also am using the adorable head wig zipper pull from K&A, also super duper cute. So I hope you guys like this tutorial for the ITA bag. It is the part of the Pimp My Mav series, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Bye. Okay, when you receive your head wig bag, it's going to come rolled just like this. We unroll it. So we got a few things to look at here. Alright, so from the front, I will show you guys, this is the head wig's face that will applique onto the front of the bag. This is the front, so we're going to applique it onto here, and then we'll have to cut that out too, and then that's going to be for the clear window. This is our back. These are for our D-ring to go into, and they're going to be at the top of the back of the bag for our strap. This is for our little side anchors right here. This is our main exterior gusset. This is our D-ring. We will get 2 straps out of that. These are for our straps. So they're just like little fun little accents that you can have on there. And then these little 2 pieces are if you're going to have like an exposed end of your, if you're going to make your own out of cotton woven or use webbing, these you could add on to the end of them, so then it gives it a finished look. Our lining is so pretty. So these 2 pieces are going to go for the ITA pocket, so the front of the bag. So it's going to go on this, and it's going to make that intersection for where your pin board will go, and I'll explain more as we get to that part. These are your actual lining pieces for the main part of the bag. In my first demonstration one, I separated and I made 2 pockets. So, or I have 4 fingers up, so 2 pockets. So I used this one to make a slip pocket, and then I just grabbed a scrap or a piece of gray fabric that I had here in my little stash, and then I added it onto the back to make a slip pocket, and so I made it a little bit shorter to make the slip pocket, and then I used this one and a somewhat similar tan color, and I made a zipper pocket. So on the back of mine, in my lining, I have a zipper pocket and a slip pocket. This is for the zipper gusset, and this is for the main gusset. And then these are our wings. So we have a front and a back for each side. And then this is our clear window for the ITA back side, which we'll cut this out and it will be sewn down in there. Alright, so now I'm going to take the time and cut all these pieces out. And then I will, on the back of my cotton woven pieces, I'm going to add SF101 to the back of those pieces. And then to the main, so onto this one. And then even on this one, I'll add a piece of Decoville light onto both of these. On this one, I will make this little window, I will make sure that I have it like a 1/4 inch away from this cut opening, so that way when I stitch down all the pieces that go on there, it's not going to add any bulk to this area. So I'll show you that one, and then I will add a piece of Decoville light for the main gusset. And oh, here's the zipper gusset for the exterior. I missed that piece. And I don't think I need to do one. I don't think I did one on the first one for the zipper gusset, but if you wanted to add a piece of Decoville light for the zipper gusset, just make sure that your zipper gusset, your Decoville light is narrower and a little bit smaller than this piece and this piece as well. And so if you have the pattern printed out at 120%, you could follow those. You get the little stabilizer pieces, so you can just use those. If you do not have your pattern pieces cut out at 120%, I will show you that part when I go to cut the Decoville. So these little pieces are the tabs for the zipper on the inside. Because I'm doing a binding, we don't have to do the zipper pocket this way. If you wanted to use these and do your zipper pocket that way, you're more than welcome to. The way that with the binding, it's a little bit harder to get these completely closed up using this method. So set those aside. Go ahead, grab your lining gusset and then your exterior gusset, and you just want to make sure if it's a little on the wider side, not a big deal. You just want to verify that it's the same length, which mine is a little bit longer, which again is not a big deal. So all we have to do is line them up and then go ahead and trim off that excess of the lining. Okay, we also need to grab our front. So then you're going to cut out this middle white portion. So you're just going to cut around on the line. And then I don't want to accidentally cut something I'm not supposed to, so I'm just going to use my scissors for the corners. Or I'm just going to use my scissors. It'll be easier. Okay, so we got this part cut out, and then let me dig through my pile. And then the clear vinyl will get sewn down on the back side. So it'll look like that. Just kind of give you a little bit of a preview of what it will look like. If you have this pattern printed at 120%, you will already have your stabilizer pieces. If you do not have the pattern printed out at 120%, go ahead, grab your Decoville light to get it at 120%. So go ahead and lay your exterior piece down. You will trace around. Since I already have mine cut, but I'll still trace it to show you guys. So you're going to, and to make sure that you don't accidentally mark this, it is easier if you put it face down, because as you're tracing, sometimes we slip, and then so we don't want to mark our exterior on the front. So we got that marked out, and then losing all my stuff here. You'll go around, and then you'll take your ruler and then a 1/2 inch. You're going to make this a 1/2 inch smaller. So I would just draw another line so I could get all of your straightaways done. And then as you go around the curve, you can tilt this up and just make little marks every so often. And so then you just kind of trace along. And then you just do that for all the corner pieces, and then you just cut out the smaller piece, and then that will give you your stabilizer or your interfacing for these. Once you get it cut out, I'm just kind of eyeballing where this one needs to go. So once you get it laid out to where it looks like it's centered in there, if you want to put a piece of tape on it before you flip it, you can, to help hold it in place. We're going to trace the opening. And then just like we did before, we're going to extend this out a 1/4 inch, make this opening a 1/4 inch larger. And then for the corners, I'm not gonna, like, the top ones are points and then the bottom ones are curved, and I'm not gonna do all the extra points. I'm just going to just freehand draw the curve into it. And then I'm just gonna go into the, so not the smaller one, you're gonna cut the larger one. And then go around and then cut out your larger piece. And then for this one, if you wanted to, you can save this and use this on another project. It's a decent sized piece. So then when you lay these down, your Decaville light is out of your seam allowances for around the opening for the window. Okay, so then that part is done. All right, after the, you're gonna be making a pin board. So a couple things you're going to need for the pin board. I'll show you at the end of the video how to make the pin board. So you're going to need some extra fabric for that. If you wanted to utilize the fabric that K&A sent you in this pack for your actual pin board, so when you see it through the opening, you see this color fabric, or if you can find something that's fairly close, that will still work. It's your preference. And so then if you do utilize this piece, you would just cut 2 more out of, like, maybe another tan, cream, or a white, and then that would be your lining pieces for the ITA pocket area. So you'll need some fabric. So the inside of your pin board, I tend to use cereal box cardboard. It is a great option. It's a lot thinner than regular cardboard. Another one, you could also use Peltex. If you happen to have that on hand, you would want the non-fusible type. And then, so there's a few different things you can utilize for the inside of the pin board. This cardboard, for one, is, if you have it on hand, it works, like I said, and then the Peltex, that will work as well. So either one is a good option for you guys to use on that one. And again, I'll be going over how to do the pin board at the end of this video. For the wings, before I get too far ahead, you're gonna need some Peltex in these guys. So when you put them wrong sides together, like they hold, but they don't, like if they're together, they kind of droop. So to be able to help them hold their shape, we're going to put some Peltex on the inside of it. So you're going to lay it wrong side up. I know it's like super hard to see because you have the cream wings and then the white Peltex. So I am tracing. Again, the back of the wings is facing up, so if you accidentally mark it, you're not marking the front. You'll put a mark on the back. So you just trace around all the little curves, and you only need to trace 2 of these. So one per wing. So I got that one. And there we go. Okay, you can kind of see them a little bit better now that they're traced out. So then you're gonna cut these guys out. All right, so before we actually fully cut these out, we're going to, let me remark this so you guys can see what I'm doing. Hopefully you can see the Sharpie better. Oh yeah, you guys can see that a lot better. Good. Okay, so I'm going to show you on the one wing and then you guys can just follow to do the same one. Right here on the straight edge, this is the side that's going to go into the seam allowance. So we want to make sure that we're not going to be putting the Peltex into the seam allowance with it. So you really want to make sure you leave a good gap over there. There we go. Now we can see that. And then we don't want to sew because we're going to be basting these together at 1/8 of an inch all the way around. So we want to make sure we stay out of our seam allowance. So you're just going to kind of freehand follow along the side that you've already, the side that you traced, and you're just going to give yourself 1/4 inch all the way around. Just kind of eyeball it. If you really want to, you can use like a little ruler to help guide you, so you really aren't getting in there. And then down here, all these little pieces, it's not as critical to be all the way to the edge. So I'm just kind of like generally going. Okay. So there you guys can see the outer wing is the actual traced line, and then my inner one is what I'm actually going to cut out, and that's going to be the size that's going to go in between the wing layers. So instead of having to draw it a second time on the other one, if you guys cut this one out, you can take it over to this wing and lay it down, and then just trace this one, and then at least they'll be the same. So pretty easy. Almost looks like somebody's pointing a finger almost. And then even when you place it down, if there's area like this area is kind of close, so then you can just come in here, cut a little more out. This is really not, doesn't need to be the most like beautiful thing in the entire world. You're just looking to have it generally on there. And make sure when you place them down, we're going to put double-sided stick tape on these because it'll make life so much easier. So then if I hold this, and if, there we go, just to kind of give you a better idea. So if I hold that, the wings aren't floppy like they were before. So if I take the Peltex out, you see the droop? And yes, it could be the clip is there, but even if you add a little bit of weight versus this is no Peltex, and then you saw what it did with the Peltex, they stayed out. So now that you have the wings are ready, and as long as everything's interfaced, we can go to the sewing machine. All right, before we get started, I am going to go over all the pieces again. So this is the zipper gusset. I did add some Decoville light to the back of it. We have our wings, so you have 4 in total, so 2 of them go one direction, and then you have a piece of Peltex that goes for that one. Then you have 2, it doesn't matter which, they can go either direction. And then another piece of Peltex for that. This is your front clear window. These are little, again, for your strap if you want to add them to the raw edge of like your webbing, or if you're doing a cotton strap, you can add these to the raw edge to be able to kind of give it more of a finished look. This is our anchor strap, which I'm going to cut in half. So those goes on the side of the back of it. This is our D-rings. This is long enough, it'll give us 2 D-ring straps. These are for our strap themselves. And I will show you my finished strap that I have from the first one using these ones. This is for your D-ring will attach in here, and then this attaches to the back of the backpack, or the back of the bag. This is, of course, Hedwig's face. So then it'll get slightly appliqued down to the clear, but it'll also get appliqued down to the front. Here is the lining for the zipper gusset. And then the bag the cut and sew came with 2 pieces. So you have the letter and then you have the owl. I went in, I'm going to do it like I did on my first one, which is over here. I added a second piece of gray, and then I made this a little bit narrower and shorter on the top and bottom, and this created my slip pocket. And then I utilized this piece and I grabbed a second tan piece. It doesn't have to be an exact match, but this will be a zipper pocket. So then I'll have both a zipper pocket and a slip pocket on the inside of the bag. We have our lining, 2 lining pieces for the main inside of the bag. And then we have our 2 pieces for the ITA pocket area. Then we have our gusset lining. We have our exterior gusset, which I have my Decoville light on the back. We have our back exterior, Decoville light on the back. And then this is our front, and then with my Decoville light on the back. Other items that you'll need either webbing, or if you wanted to make your own strap, you can do that as well. If you have a label, you'll need your label. You will need zipper tape. You will need a number 5 zipper pull. So I'm using the Hedwig pull from K&A as well. You will need 2 number 3 zippers. You can get these at any craft store like Joann's, Walmart, any of those places like that sell these. And then I'm going to do mine using limited hardware. So I'm going to show you how to be able to do this using the least amount of hardware. So for this option, you'll need a swivel clasp, 1 or 2 D-rings, your choice. If you want to be able to attach it on both sides, you'll need 2. If you just want to be able to attach it onto the one side, you'll only need 1 D-ring. And then you'll need a slide adjuster. If you want to do the strap like the instructions, you will need 2 swivel clasps, either a rectangle or a D-ring, a slide adjuster, and then 2 D-rings. So I have the 1 D-ring here and then the 1 D-ring here. So it only attaches on the one side here. So that's all the hardware that you would need to do if you're going to do the straps per the instructions. And then you'll also need binding for the inside of the bag. I'm using waterproof canvas for mine. You can use bias tape or pre-made bias tape. It is your preference. When I cut mine, I cut it to 1 1/4 inches, so 1.25 inches wide. So that way I'm making sure that I catch the back side, and then all I have to do at the end is trim it all off when I'm done. Okay, and that looks like, yep, I think that's all the supplies we need for right now. I'm gonna switch my thread over to white and we can get started. Okay, let's start with our wings. So we're gonna need some double-sided stick tape for this. It just makes it a lot easier. We're going to add, there it is. I'm gonna add a few pieces. Do one up there, one down here. And then, if you want to cooperate, there we go. Peel those off. We're going to grab one of the wings. We're going to lay this down. We're going to make sure we leave a good gap over there because we don't want to accidentally catch this into our seam allowance. Okay, that one side's down. Now we're going to add the other. And then we're going to do our best to try to line the wings up with the other side. I'm going to clip. And if your wings aren't perfect, you can see one side through a little bit more, or one hangs over a little bit more than the other, not the end of the world. Because after we base this down together, then you can always go back through and you can trim the wings up to make sure that they're even. And then additionally, what I'm gonna do to help give the wings that kind of more of that 3D look, when I go around, there's these little gray marks that come up. So I'm gonna come up through this one. So I'm gonna go through all of them, and then I'm gonna come over here, and then I'm gonna go do this, and then go up, up. And so it's like a lot of extra little steps, but when it's finished, this is what it looks like. And one, it helps hold the Peltex in place, but also it just really helps give that wing that extra added detail. So the wing with just the print versus the wing with the stitching. So you can see, you don't have to do going up into those, and you don't have to do this. You don't have to do any of it. The only thing you need to do is go around at 1/8 of an inch. That's all that you need to do. So I'll start on that, and then okay, so I finished the wing. I ended up going up the sides so you can see what it looks like. I haven't done this part. So if you like just the up part and you don't want to have to do that, you don't have to. So here again, you can see the wings side by side. You can see what it looks like with that and then without it. So that is a total personal preference choice. So when you go to do the other one, there it is, you need to make sure, because there is the right side and then there's a wrong side. So the wrong side is very flat. And then this side, it's like when you hold it up, it's a little bit more, it's got a little more puff to it. And then this side is very flat. So when you want to make sure that when you're stitching your other wing, you are going to be stitching on the top and it's going the other direction. Otherwise you're going to have one that's right side up and one that's wrong, not right side up or wrong side up. So to avoid doing that, leave your right side up wing there, so then you know what you need to, well, what side you need to stitch on. All right, so on mine, just to go back, there are a few areas like right here that I can trim off. Nothing is horribly off. It's all a personal preference. So, okay. So that one's done, and so now let's make sure we're going to be stitching again on the right side. So this side is the up side, so this is the side that I need to go into my machine. Once you have your wing all finished, just like we did with the other one, we're going to go around and we're going to trim off the excess. This one had a few more that didn't quite line up. Okay, and once your wings are completely done, you can go ahead and set these aside for now. The next thing we're going to work on is our front. What you want to do is, so we'll have our front, and we have our inside of our lining for the ITA pocket. Let's go ahead and we'll mark the center of the bottom and the top. And then we're putting the exterior right side up. We're going to place the interior right side up, or sorry, right side down. So they are right sides together. I'm not really worried about marking the center of that lining piece. So it is a little on the taller side, no big deal. And because our lining is a cotton woven and our exterior is a vinyl, we want to make sure that our cotton does not fray. So we need to go around and we're going to baste the exterior and this lining together. And we're going to do that at 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to go this way. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to trim away the center of this lining piece. Okay, and then you can either save this or you can throw it away. We're not going to need it. To be able to help this turn out, we're going to go make a cut into our corner without cutting our threads. If you do accidentally cut your threads, no big deal. Just go back with your sewing machine and sew that corner again. We're going to put little itty bitty little tiny little snips around this curve. And then we're going to turn the lining to the inside. And then if you want, add some clips that'll help hold it. And then just work your seams. So you're gonna roll them to get to where the lining is on the inside and you don't see it from the front. All right, once you have your the front opening all clipped together, you want to make sure to go around to all the edges and make sure you don't have any of the lining sticking through. Sometimes that's definitely easier said than done. And then we're going to be adding our clear vinyl onto this, and I don't want to stitch this down and then have another row of stitches to tack the clear down. So to be able to only have one row of stitching, we're going to go around and we're going to clip, and we're going to transfer our clips from the inside to the outside. And so the clips are literally only there just to hold the pieces. If you wanted to, you could go around and you could add some double-sided stick tape between the lining and the exterior to hold that in place. You can do that. Just cruising around. Not going to be perfect, but you can kind of work it and roll it as you try. And then this will help things. I'm going to trim off this excess real quick. Not perfect, but it's okay. So then we're going to kind of, I'm rolling and pulling the lining up. So that way it looks good here. And hold, and then throw a clip down. So this will just make it easier, so then we don't have to have 2 rows of stitching around this opening. Okay, so that's for the most part prepped. I'll kind of play around with it a little bit more. And so now we need to grab our double-sided stick tape again. We're going to add it around, right along up at the edges. If you don't want to put it on the clear, you could put it on the back side of the fabric as well. Maybe put it down just a little bit lower than if you're going to do it on the back of the fabric, leave your 1/8 inch so you don't have your double-sided stick tape there. I'm going to go ahead and peel off the top one. And then from this side, you can kind of get an idea of placement through the front, making sure that all sides of the clear reach and cover your corners. And I'm going to press that one down. And then go around and then peel up the paper on all the pieces, or if you want to do one side at a time. Okay. And then go ahead and flip it over and just verify that everything looks good. And if you can wiggle around your lining fabric so it doesn't poke out. All you can do is try your best on that one. It's like I said, it's easier said than done. All right, and then we're going to go around and we're going to baste this together, or technically we're going to sew it together at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance right along the edge. And then I didn't back stitch on this. I'm going to pull the threads to the back and tie a knot. And then if you want to, you can go around and then trim this excess. You can make this into more of a curve, and you can curve this point so that way you don't have anything sharp. And then if any of the double-sided stick tape is sticking out, you can go ahead and you can peel that off. And if you didn't want to round those corners, you didn't have to. You could just leave them alone. It is personal preference on that one. So I'm going to take my clips off. So something I'm going to show you guys to help with the bulk, because if you're doing this on a domestic machine, you have your vinyl exterior, you have the inside of the ITA pocket for one layer, then you'll have the lining and the back side of the ITA pocket. So you have 4 layers, so 1 vinyl and 3 layers of cotton woven, and then plus the binding. So if you're doing this on a domestic, depending on your machine, it can get a little thick. So when you're doing this, if you're gonna keep all the layers together, make sure to keep your SF 101 out of your seam allowances. I just see some excess hanging off of mine I'm going to trim. And then that will help with some of your bulk, but then I will show you guys another option. Sorry. So when we put these together, we will stitch these together at a bigger seam allowance. So then it will pull them out of your seam allowance. So your seam allowance at your end is 1/4 inch. So if we do this at like 3/8 or a little, maybe a little tiny bit more, then it will reduce or pull these layers away from your seam allowance. So then you have less to worry about and less bulk going on in there. So, but before we start playing with that, we need to add our little face. So again, we need some double-sided stick tape for this. And I would put it in on the beak, but it's gonna be, you can see it on the back side, but it's not really the end of the world. So we wanna make sure that we position our face to be out of our seam allowances here on the edge. Because if we go too high, the top of the eyes around here, or the face, are gonna get caught in your seam allowance. So we need to bring it down so that way we avoid the seam allowances. And then his beak will be right over the wax seal. All right, so that looks good. So I'm gonna go ahead and peel off these guys. And then I'm gonna do my best to try to line it up again. And then again, just make sure we're out of the seam allowance up top. We have the beak on the nose. It is centered. So between the eyes over here on the side, it's centered on the opening. We're out of the seam allowance. If we're touching the beak, or we're touching the wax seal, the beak is touching the wax seal. So that looks good. So I'm gonna go ahead and press. All right, so our face is held in place. So on my first one, I didn't actually stitch the beak down. So the beak is sitting free. On this one, I'm going to take the time and I'm going to switch out my top, at least my top thread, to black, but I'm just going to start here and go down with the black first. So that looks really good with the beak stoned down, so then I don't have to worry about it moving around on me. So now I'm going to go through and I'm going to stitch this down at the white. I'm going to start here at the corner. I'm going to go all the way around and then in back here. And yes, I will be going through this lining, but again, this is the inside of the ITA pocket. So, and just to explain, ITA is a Japanese based word, and it actually means painful because it's meant for a pin board. Pin, when you get poked, it's painful. So that's what that means. It boils down to, it is just a way to have a clear window to show off your pins, your collections, or other collectible items. So like in my first one, I have a Harry Potter themed pin, and then I have a Sewist pin. So that's all that ITA means, if anybody was curious or didn't know. There we go. Okay, now that our face is all sewn down, so this is what the inside of it looks like. It's really not going to be that noticeable once you're sticking in your pin board inside. So now we need to grab one of our lining pieces for the actual main side of the bag, and then we need the back of our ITA pocket lining. And so this one looks like it's a little on the tall side, so I'm just going to lay my front down. And I'm just going to throw some clips on while I cut. All right, so we're going to trim down the top of this. All right, so what we want to do is We're gonna lay this down. You want to get an idea of where the zipper pocket is. So we're gonna add a zipper pocket right above the clear, so then we can't see inside of it. So we want that there. And then because the back of the owl eyes are right there, we could actually go down a little bit lower, so we don't have to have it quite so high. We can actually come down here and put the zipper pocket. So we just get everything kind of lined up on top of each other, and I'm only putting them on top of each other just to kind of keep everything lined up so I know how far down we can add the pocket and everything. Well, I really didn't need to add that one, but so I can feel it here. So we're just going to kind of grab it like a pencil and just kind of trace a mark. Just to give yourself a reference point. And so we're going to then find our centers. I'm just going to kind of give it a little press. I'm not actually going to clip this one. Okay, so we got our center. We're going to grab our little ruler and we're going to then draw a 6-inch box. So I'm going to go just a little above that line, like an 1/8 inch above. And then I have my 3 lined up with my center crease. And I'm drawing my 6-inch line there. I'm going to put a little up mark to show my center. I'm going to go to that line, and so I'm doing a 3/8 inch box. So I have my 3/8 inch line lined up on the line I just drew. And now I'm going to mark, stay on my line, the other side of my box, and then connect your ends. Then we're going to line up our bottoms. So on this one I will do a little snip just so I know where my bottom is. And sure, why not, let's do the top while we're here. You're going to line up, so we have our center crease. We're going to line it up with our center notch on the top and the bottom. If you want to throw a clip on it to help hold it in place, you can. You don't have to. And then we're going to stitch around this box, so right on top of the lines we drew. Okay. I'm going to kind of give it a little fold, and then I'm going to make a cut right in the middle in between the 2 lines. And then I'm going to cut down one side in the middle, and about 3/8 inch away from that side, I'm going to stop, and then I'm going to pivot, and I'm going to go to one corner, and you want to go as far into the corner as you can without cutting your threads. And again, if you accidentally cut your threads, no big deal. Just take it back to your sewing machine and sew around the corner again. And then flip it over. We're going to do the same thing to the other side. And then we're going to turn this lining to the inside. And then roll your seams, and then because this is a cotton, you can take this over to the sewing, or you are at a sewing machine, you can take this over to your iron and press the seams if you want. Mine's over there and I'm not getting up. Anybody else have their little fur babies that like to lay around their chair, and then when they look down, it's like, oh, I can't move because I am literally trapped by dogs or cats or any other fur baby that you might have. So So we just work at the seams. I'm just throwing the clips on there to just kind of help hold it in place. And then so press, I'm just finger pressing. Okay, so now I can take those off. And give a good finger press, or you can take it again, you can take it over to your iron. And then you're gonna grab one of your number 3 zippers. If you wanted to use a number 5 zipper tape and put in a zipper pull in it, then you would make this opening, instead of 3/8, you'd do a 1/2 inch on that one. And then you'd want to have about an 8-inch, do an 8-inch zipper tape right here, and then you can just trim off the sides. So I'm just going to line up my zipper to be in the middle of the hole, making sure, because this is a number 3, it has a zipper end and the zipper pull on it. I don't want to accidentally sew over that metal, so I'm making sure it's not going to be in my sewing way. Slide that under. Try to pull your lining out of the way so you don't see it when you're done. And then you're going to sew your zipper tape down to this. Like, I am not doing words very well today. And I'm just sewing right along the edge at an 1/8 inch. If you want to use double-sided stick tape, you can definitely use that if you want to. And then I'm going to stop here at this corner. Before I turn, I want to lift my foot. I want to slide my zipper into the area, into the little opening that I've been stitching around. And then I can pivot and then sew across my seams. And then I didn't back stitch. I'm going to pull my threads to the back and knot them off. And then you can trim off the excess of your zipper. And then make sure to melt your ends, or heat seal your ends. So, and then if I were to lay this on top of it, that's what it looks like. Yay! Looks good. Okay, so to help remove the bulk, especially if you're doing this on a domestic machine, we're going to clip the ITA pocket pieces together. So make sure you're not clipping your exterior vinyl piece, you're not clipping your lining. So just the 2 tan ITA pieces. And make sure before you started clipping those together, you want to make sure that your clips or your notches are lined up, so that way, because once you sew those together, you can't really wiggle your exterior or your lining piece together. So just make sure that everything's lined up prior to clipping them together. And we're going to then kind of pull and roll the lining, so the birds, the lining piece, that lining piece, we're going to kind of tuck that down and out of the way. I'm going to kind of push this underneath, and so I'm going I honestly don't even know, because this lining piece is bigger than this other one. But I'm going to where the edge of my foot is. I can see just a little bit of the lining of the ITA pocket. So the piece that was on the back of this front exterior, I can see just a little bit of it sticking on the outside of my foot. And so my foot is 1/4 inch. So it's like between 1/4 inch and 3/8. If I go a little bit more, so now I'm about 3/8 of an inch. All right, so just double check that you don't have your lining piece underneath your foot. And we're gonna sew this around of these two ITA lining pieces together. So, and as you go, just really double check, keeping an eye out for your lining piece on the underside, that you're not accidentally sewing through that. So on my top, because my back piece is a little bit shorter than this one that I can see, I'm actually going a little bit bigger of a seam allowance, just so to make sure that I'm catching this one. Yep, I caught my exterior. It's okay. So I just need to rethread this real quick, and then I can keep going. And then just start back just a little before, or I'm going to start back just a little bit before it ended. And I'll do a little back stitch there. And then double checking that my lining is out of the way. I'm glad I double checked that, because I would have fit that too. Okay, exterior out of the way. All right, now you're going to grab your scissors, and making sure you don't cut your exterior or your lining piece, you're going to trim the excess of your ITA lining pieces. So the tan, you're going to be trimming only the tan pieces. All right, we're going to get a little creative here. And this is when you're going to need a piece of paper. We're going to kind of fold that lining out of the way. And this is to figure out the pin board, because we're all going to be slightly different on this, so it's not a one-size-fits-all pin board kind of deal. So this is the best way to get the most accurate pin board for your bag. You're going to grab your paper, you're going to place it right on top. Be able to see it a little bit, but you may not, so you're going to have to pick up the corners of your paper as you go around, and you're just going to trace the outer corner edge of your ITA lining pieces. Okay, so that's going to give us a very rough drawing of what our ITA lining is. And then at the end of the video, we will take this piece of paper, and then we will make it into a pin board. So for right now, go ahead and set this aside. Make sure that you label it. So that way you're like, why do I have this weird shape on a piece of paper? And you don't want to accidentally throw it away. So at least you know that's what that is. And for right now, we can go ahead and we can baste our lining and our exterior together. So go ahead and clip them together. And we're gonna go around and we're gonna base this at 1/8 of an inch, and you can extend your stitch length to be a little bit longer. And then that's the end of that. So when you open, there's your ITA window. And then this is how you would access your pin board in that front pocket area. So for now, we can go ahead and set this aside. All right, let's start working on our straps. So we're going to do our D-ring first. You're going to mark your center. And then you can use double-sided stick tape if you want. I just fold it in to meet that center line, give it a crease, and then I just sew down the one side and sew back up the other. And then we're going to take our D-ring tabs and we're going to cut this in half. So now we have our 2. On this, so this is the anchor strap with my D-ring tab sticking out of it. If you want to do the D-ring anchor tab like this, you're going to fold this in half. You're going to grab one of your D-ring tabs with the D-ring, fold that in half. You're going to put D-ring down, folding this in half. And then you'd stitch across this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance there. And then you would turn it to where you turn it right side out, so then it would look like so-ish. This is definitely not fully extended how it would be. And then you top stitch across and then down. And then I didn't end up top stitching on this one. I think I forgot, or I skipped it. I don't remember. But for me, when I do this, especially if you're going to be using a domestic machine, this excess gets in the way for when you add it to the side. It sticks out, so then that's just more layers of extra bulk that you can run into. So for me on this one, I am just going to be using my D-ring tabs, and I'm going to be angling them, and I'm going to put one on each side. So I will not be using these. And then if you're still confused on how to use these, Lynn's has a tutorial on the Mav pack itself, and you can just kind of fast forward to this part where she will demonstrate and explain how this part works. If you want to do this as a traditional backpack, instead of doing it as a sling style backpack, instead of utilizing these pieces here, as cute as they are, you would take your webbing pieces. So let me grab this one and another one. I'm just grabbing a random color from my excess bin. Yeah, so you would then angle, you would have your center notch. You're going to angle one that way and one this way. And then if you wanted to, you could get a small piece, like maybe 7 inches, and then put that webbing on either end. And then you would have like a handle for your backpack. And then these 2 pieces, I like to cut mine at 36 inches. It's a nice length for adults, and it works well for my husband. He's a big 6'5" guy. So big dude, the 36 inch straps work well for him. If he probably honestly would want them a little longer, but 36 inches works for the most part for most people. And then so you would stitch those down. You would need 2 slide adjusters, and then you would have your 2 D-rings on either side, and this would be more of a traditional backpack. So that is an option for you if you do not want to have it as a sling style. And then if you were going to do your strap like this, like it is in the instructions. You would take one of these, lay this to the D-ring to the inside. You would grab your other piece here and you'd sandwich it in between. I could throw a couple clips in to kind of hold everything in place. You would sew this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I like to back stitch over this a little bit and then continue, and then you would turn it right side out, and then you would top stitch at 1/8 of an inch. That is that is the way that the instructions have it. You use a little bit more hardware doing your straps like the instructions, so if you're wanting to be a little thrifty, then try it this way, the way that I'm going to do it. So I'm going to attach my webbing directly to this. So I'm going to pull a 1.5 yards of webbing. And make sure to heat seal both of your ends. And then if the instructions are a little confusing, again, Lynn's video on the Mav pack she does the strap just like she does in the instructions. So if you're a little confused on how to do the strap per the instructions, go ahead and watch her video. I'll do a quick little synopsis of it. When I do my straps with these, with my sliders or my swivel clasps, I will first add my webbing around it, and I will stitch this down first. So that just reinforces and makes that really strong, because if in here, if you only have it sewn down right here and you pull really hard, what if this rips, like, just to be safe, and then to keep this like in a nice, so the stress isn't on this vinyl piece. Sew it down like this first. Then grab these cute little pieces. You would center your webbing in between those two corners. And then you would sew down. Once you get it all lined up and the back and the front look good together, you would start from this side, sew down, follow the edges, and you would be doing it at 1/8 of an inch, and then you would end over here at this corner. So then that just makes this so much stronger, and then you don't put any of the stress on this vinyl piece at all. You would grab your slide adjuster. So you would put that, so you'd go up over the bar, come down, so you want to leave a gap. And then if you're going to use a rectangle or a D-ring, I like the rectangle because then it just keeps everything nice and level. I'm just going to borrow this D-ring and show you guys on the D-ring. You would go through your D-ring, you would come up on this side of the bar, on the underside. So you come up and then push the bar over, and then you're going to grab this piece and you're going to go back down between the bar and this piece of webbing. I know, it's a little confusing, the small working area. And so then you have these pieces that move, and then you have these two together. So then I'm going to pull my excess through to make it easier. You're going to like pull that over. And so this is where one of the pieces of those little red tabs, if you wanted to use these, you can. You would sew the tab over the raw edge or the end of your strap, and then you could sew that together or right over the top of this, and then you could trim off that, and then if you wanted to, you could add some edge coat to it if you wanted to. It just gives it a more finished look. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to. I didn't do that on mine. So there are a few ways you can do this. You can sew up and down and make a line across it. If you want to pull a little bit more, you can sew a box around it. It is completely your preference how you want to finish these off. On mine, I will just be sewing straight up and down. I'm gonna use another piece. So this is gonna be super duper long. So it's just a demonstration piece. To get this piece of your strap, you would put one piece through your D-ring or rectangle. That's it, that we just did for the slide adjuster. So you go through there. I'm borrowing my other swivel clasp. I didn't take two out. You would go through your swivel clasp, and we're going to keep all the tails of these towards the swivel clasp. So you're going to sew down this piece so then it locks in the swivel clasp, and then you're going to bring the end that comes from the D-ring or the rectangle, and you're going to butt those up together, and then you're going to sew across this. Or if you bring them in together and you have it clipped, you can just sew like a little box around those two ends, so that way it holds it all together, so then it locks these in to place. So then you have so then this is really strong together. And then you're going to come in, and then you'll add this little decorative piece. And again, making sure that it lines up. So everything, so the edges line up, it looks good in between there. And then again, like we did on the other side, you'll start on this side, sew down and end over here, and you're going to do that at 1/8 of an inch. And so then again, like I said, for the other side, your strength is then, and everything is then within the webbing and here. So then none of the stress is being put onto your vinyl piece. And so then that's going to just keep it looking nicer for a longer time. So that's how you would do the strap. And then when it's all finished and put together, this is what it looks like. So here's my rectangle and my small piece of webbing. And so those are all sewn together and around. I come up, and then there's my slide adjuster. And then here's my other end. So this is what it would look like. And then when you grab your back, this one hooks up here to the top. And that way the slide adjuster, when it's fully as tight as it can go, it goes towards the top. And then this, with the piece with the D-ring or the rectangle, is going to be down here clipped to the bottom. Okay. So that's how you do the strap. Okay, but to save hardware, no, long story, squirrel time. We're going to then put our webbing directly to this piece, so we're saving a D-ring there. We're going to put these together. We're going to stitch around this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. We're going to trim off these upper corners. And then we're going to turn this out. And then you're going to grab a turning tool, or in my case, a mechanical pencil. And then we're going to apply pressure and push into the corners. You don't want to be super like forceful, and because you don't want to rip through the corner. But you just want to poke out the corners the best you can. and then roll your seams to get them to lay flat. I'm just going to throw some clips on to help it. If you are doing this on a domestic machine, as adorable as this is, if you're worried about your machine having too much bulk because it's going to go through your exterior vinyl, it's going to go through these 2 layers of vinyl, and then it's going to go through your lining and then plus the binding. So that's going to be a lot of bulk right there at the top. If you want to, trace these pieces prior to sewing them together, trace them onto some gray cotton woven fabric, cut them out. If you want to interface them, you can, and then sew them together like I did, or follow the straps per the pattern if you want to do it that way. And then that way, this piece that gets sewn into your seam allowance, it's less bulky right there for if you're using a cotton woven. And the same thing for the D-rings. If you want to use the anchor straps, like on this one, if you want to use those, if you're worried about too much bulk on your domestic machine, trace those out onto a cotton woven and then use that instead. Or you can, if you're going to go directly to the D-rings, you can make these out of cotton woven as well, and it just helps reduce the bulk and makes it a little bit nicer on your machine, since this bag only does come in the pebbled vinyl. All right, so we got that. So now we're going to top stitch this at 1/8 of an inch. All right, so that's the end of our strap, and I'm going to cut off these little pieces that stick out. And then making sure there's no twists in this. Oh, there would have been. That was the practice side. So making sure there's no twists. We're going to attach the other end. So just like we did before with the swivel clasp or the slide adjuster, go up and over. I'm going to go to my swivel clasp. I'm going to go down, bring it back up. So then it looks like this. There you go. You can see the separation. There we go. And we go up on the other side of the bar, and then come back down. So then that's what it'll look like. So then I'm going to grab this piece here and this piece, so the 2 inner pieces. I'm going to pull some slack, and then I'm going to pull it back over so that way I have clear view of my end piece. I'm going to slide that over, and I'm going to just sew straight up and down there, back stitching a few times. And then I just heat seal this back up. So that's how I would do my straps, with using a little less hardware. So that is an option. Okay, and so now we're going to grab our exterior. And I'm going to add my D-rings because I want to be able to switch this to either side if I want to. So I'm going to use 2 D-rings. And again, if you're going to make this into a traditional backpack, you can utilize just putting your straps directly here. You can add a little strap and then using 2 D-rings and 2 slide adjusters. So I'm lining up my corner point, and then it's angling inward. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Okay. And then I add in this guy at the top. So to make sure we are putting them in the right spot, I'm going to find my center notch up at the top And real quick on the bottom, and then as I'm finding my center at the bottom, I'm also verifying that those guys are placed at the same spot, which they are. And then we can find the center of this one, just to make sure that we're putting it in the correct spot. And then make sure that when you're placing it down, that you want your slide adjuster to be facing up. So if you put it down this way, then the slide adjuster is going to be facing the wrong direction and it's going to be upside down. So you want to make sure that you're putting your slide adjuster facing up. That's if you've already added your slide adjuster and your swivel clasp. If you haven't added those, then no big deal. You can add those on at the very end. Or if you're doing the regular one of these and you just have a D-ring, then it's the same no matter which way you put it. And then go ahead and base these down at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. All right, and that is our back, and then we can just trim off these little angle pieces here. All right, since I got these guys basted on, I forgot to baste these guys on while you're doing all the basting. So we have the corners that drop down, and right there at that kind of like that notch area, that's a good spot for these guys to line up with that. And you want the pretty side of your wing to be facing up, because when it turns out, it's going to be facing outward. So this part and this part are going to be against your back, so nobody's going to really see the back of the wing. So you want to be able to have the pretty side out. So pretty side up, and then at that little notch, just go ahead and throw a clip on, and then base that down at a 1/8 inch. And then we're going to do the same thing for the other side, making sure our pretty side of our wing is facing up, and we have that little curve down right before it comes into the straight. And that looks good there. Flip that around, throw a clip on to help it. All right, and that's our wings. We're going to move into our lining. So let's go ahead and find the top and bottom of this one. And if you want, you can throw a clip on just to help hold it in place while you're moving it around. We're going to need our little pocket pieces. So this is going to be the zipper pocket, and this is going to be a slip pocket. So for the slip pocket, I'm going to place them right sides together. Just checking. Okay. So on our top and bottom, I'm going to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance on both, and then a 1/4 seam allowance on the sides. But I'm going to leave my opening over here on this side. We're going to go over to the corners, and we're going to snip the corners on all of them. And then we're going to trim across the bottom and the top. And then through the hole that we left, we're going to turn this pocket right side out. And before you completely turn your pocket out, we're going to kind of try to prep the corners, and turning the corners in first. Okay, and then go ahead and then push it all the way through. And then you can grab your handy dandy turning tool and then go over to your corners and then push them all out. And then you can take this over to your iron and you can give it a good press to make sure to roll the edges to get them to line up, and then you can press out the wrinkles and make the seams all nice. I just don't feel like getting up. And then fold your pocket in half and kind of give it a little crease at the bottom and the top. And then I'm gonna do mine an inch up. And then you're gonna line up your center notch with your center crease. And then if you're not sure about the top, I have my ruler in the center of my notch over here, and so then you just want to make sure that it's lined up with your center of your, or this. Oh, before I forget, we have to top stitch this first. So we're going to top stitch the pocket at 1/8 of an inch. Alright, so let's try that again. So I'm going to be 1 inch up, and I got my bottom lined up. That looks good. So then bring it over to your sewing machine, and then we're going to sew this down at 1/8 of an inch. Okay, and then on the back of your extra tan piece, we're going to mark our center 1 inch down. We're going to draw a 6-inch box. And then 3/8 inch down from that, we're going to draw a second line. And then you're going to connect your sides. And then we're going to come up here, and then above our zip slip pocket. So let's check out where I'm at. I am 1.5 inches down. Let's take a look at that. So that's good spacing. So between the pockets. So here's the end of this one, and then here's this one. So about 1 inch space. So 1.5 inches down. And we've got to get our center notch and our center notch lined up. So that looks good. Bring that over to your sewing machine, and we're going to stitch on the line around the box. And then for this, if you wanted to use a regular number 5 zipper tape, then this would be a 1/2 inch, and so I'd go a little bit higher on, instead of being 1.5 inches down, maybe just go 1 inch down, and then draw a 1/2 inch wide box if you're going to use number 5 zipper tape. And then cut your zipper tape about 7.5, somewhere in there. That way you have some on the excess. And then I'm going to fold this in half. I'm going to make a little snip in the center, and then I'm going to, just like we did with the ITA pocket zipper, I'm going to cut right down the middle, and then about 1/4 inch to 3/8 inch away from the edge, I'm going to cut into the corners. And then flip it around, and then do that to the other side. And if you accidentally nick your threads, just put it back underneath your sewing machine and stitch around those edges again. And then we're going to turn this pocket through the hole we just cut, and then roll your seams. And you can take this over to the iron to press the seams. And then just kind of finger press them, or you can take it over to the iron. And then you're going to grab your other zipper tape. So I am using a number 3. And just like the ITA pocket, we're going to center the zipper tape in the opening, making sure that my metal tab, I'm not going to sew over that. And then you're going to sew around your little opening at 1/8 of an inch. And then before I round the corner, I'm going to lift my foot and I'm going to push that zipper pull into that opening. Close, pull the two sides closed, and then I'm going to sew over it. And if it is easier, you can put double-sided stick tape on the upside or the right side of the zipper tape and then put it onto the here to help hold everything in place. That is completely optional. And then I didn't back stitch, I'm going to pull my threads to the back. Okay, we're going to take our side with the letter and we're going to lay that right sides together, and we're going to put some clips around it to hold it in place. And then we're going to sew on all 4 sides of this pocket at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then as you're going around, make sure you're not sewing through your lining, but then watch out if you're using a number 3 zipper tape, the little metal ends of these, you do not want to sew over those either with a industrial machine or a domestic machine, either one, because those are metal and your needle is not going to like it. And you're more apt, especially on the domestic machines, you could potentially break your needle going over those. And then you can go ahead and trim off your excess zipper. And then make sure to heat seal your ends. Alright, so now we have our zipper pocket. So when you open it up, you see your letter, and then you also have your slip pocket as well. So we can grab this piece and our back of our exterior. We're going to line up our top notches. We're going to line up our bottom notches. And then we're just going to go around and clipping everything and baste this on at a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and you can extend your stitch length to be a little bit longer. And then for now you can set your back piece aside. We're going to move on to our zipper gusset. So I don't like to mark any of the centers on these guys until we have the zipper gusset and the regular gusset sewn together and we have our circle gusset. And then I will fold those in half just because things kind of shift around on us. And centers don't always end up being centers again. So we're going to just take your gusset piece, and then I'm just going to make my zipper tape just a little bit longer than what my actual zipper gusset is. And then you're going to heat seal your ends. So we're going to start with our exterior first. We're going to lay our zipper right on top of it, and then making sure to kind of have a little bit on each side hang over and clip that together. And you're going to baste this or sew this on at 1/8 of an inch. And I didn't put my zipper pull on. I'm going to put that on after I have this part finished. So then we're going to grab the right side of our zipper lining and we're going to put it right down on top so we have a zipper sandwich. So it'll be right side of the exterior is facing up. We have the back of the zipper tape, and so the right side of our lining is going to go right on top of that. And so we're going to line that up with our zipper gusset of the exterior. So make sure we have that end lined up, and then we're going to clip that down. And we're going to sew all this together at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, and you're going to grab those pieces and you're going to kind of press your seams open. So I'm kind of pulling on the zipper going one way and then my exterior and my lining going the other way. I'm not pulling on them super hard because if you pull too hard, your zipper can become wavy. So I'm making sure to line up my exterior and my lining pieces together. So I'm just kind of doing a quick little press and kind of scoop. I'm pinching those together, the seams where I just sewed. And then kind of giving it a finger press. And then you're going to top stitch this at 1/8 of an inch. And then depending on how you want your bag to open, if you're looking at it from the front, so the zipper is towards the front. If you want it to open from the left to the right, you need to insert your zipper pull on the right hand side. If you're doing doubles pulls, you can do one on each side and it doesn't matter. And then if you want it to open from the right to the left, you insert it on the left hand side. And then however your zipper ends look, if you have a zipper jig, then this doesn't really matter. But if you don't, check what your zipper teeth, what they look like before you pull them apart. Because then when you grab your zipper, you're going to put one side in, and you're not going to put it all the way in, just a little bit, just enough to hold it in there. Then you're going to slide in the other side. Oh, I have a little too much of that one side. And then you're going to look from the back side of your zipper, and you're going to push the zipper tape up into the zipper pull. And you're kind of sliding the zipper down at the same time. And however your teeth look as they're coming out, if they look the same, then you're going to have a beautiful, perfect zipper every time. If your teeth, when you slide it through the zipper pull, are slightly off, then when you pull it down, your zipper tape is going to be slightly off. So make sure that your teeth look the same before and after. So then we're going to grab our zipper or our gusset exterior. We're going to line up the one side. So we're doing right side of the exterior to the right side of the exterior. We're lining up our edges. I'm going to clip those together. And we're going to sew that together at 1/8 of an inch. I totally just realized something. If you have a label, and depending on where you want to put your label, if you want to put it in the inside of your bag, you can, like up here is a nice little area. So I can put mine just above my zipper. Or if you want to put it on the exterior, on one of these bags, I put it up high. If you put it down low, it kind of starts to cover your outpost design. You could put it in the center. So it's a preference. So I forgot to mention that before where I basted this together. So I'm going to set my guesses aside. I'm going to open this back up, and I'm going to add my label here to the inside of my bag. So wherever you need to add your label, if you're going to add it, if you were going to add it to the front, like down here, before you basted it together, you would add your label down here, or if you wanted it to go there, wherever you want your label, before you baste the lining and your exterior together, add your label, because then you're not going to have to do what I'm doing right now. And that's a nice part of when you do baste these together, basting them at a larger stitch length, because then it makes it a lot easier to pick the stitches out And then you're not having to sit there and pick through a whole mess load of them if they're really tight together. Okay, well now that I got that fixed, we can go back to our gussets. All right, we're gonna grab our lining piece and we're gonna see how the lining is right side up. We're gonna grab our lining and we're going to put that right side down so they are right sides together. Lining up our edge. And then clip to hold it in place, and we're going to sew that together at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You want to top pull your lining and your exterior and separate them and press them and then make sure everything's still lined up, and then top stitch this. You can do that right now. You're going to grab your other end of your gusset and you're going to line that up with your other end of your zipper gusset. We're going to sew that together at a 1/8 inch seam allowance. You're going to then take your lining and put it right sides together with the other side of the zipper lining. And we're going to sew all that together at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so then we're going to turn all this out. And then grab your lining and your exterior, kind of press them to roll the seams. I like to put a clip at those to help hold them. And then do that to the other side. Kind of press them open. And then so we're gonna go around and I'm gonna clip the lining to the exterior. So if you wanted to, as we were going, you could have sewn across the top and done a top stitch of this, either an 1/8 inch or a 1/4, whichever one you prefer. I personally do not, I skip those. So, but we're gonna baste all of these together at an 1/8 of an inch. You can extend your stitch length out. And then on this side, you only need to go from one side to the other. You do not need to go across the zipper. So basting that together just makes it really easy when you go to put on the front and the back exterior pieces. Having this all sewn together just makes it super easy to be able to maneuver it. And so this is like our gusset circle, I call. So because it makes a circle. So at this point, this is where I mark my centers. So I line up the zipper gusset and the zipper gusset and the gusset come together, that piece. I put a clip there, and then on my zipper itself, I don't like to make a notch on my zipper. I like to take a marking pin, and in that crease I'll just make a center mark. And then on the other side, I'm going to put another clip. And I'm going to pull that out. And then so this is going to give us our center for the back top. We're going to come down and find the center for the long side. And that's going to give us our centers for those as well. Because if you would have marked the center for your long gusset and then your zipper gusset prior to this, in sewing, things can move, things can shift, and so sometimes you might have a second notch, and then as you're going, it's like, okay, well, what notch am I using? And so it just gets to make things less confusing. I just wait to mark my centers at this point. All right, we're gonna work with our front first. I like to do the front on binding bags first, with the exception of the Forbidden Forest Light Up Mav. That one, you need to start, like, it's easier to start with the back. Well, you need to start with the back because that's where the light battery pack and everything goes. But on stuff like this, on normal ones that don't have something special like that, I like to start with the front because it gives it, we have the most wiggle room to be able to maneuver the bag, and so that way we can get it to look the best. If we put our back on first, you have a little less wiggle room and maneuverability of the bag, so sometimes putting on the front can be a little bit more difficult. So we are going to line up our center mark with our center notch. and we are putting the right side of the zipper to the right side of the exterior. So I'm going to put a couple clips down and then find the center notch of your gusset and then the center notch of your exterior. You're going to line those up together and then clip that. And then I like to start at the bottom, and then I like to get that curve going. And then you just go around and you clip along all the pieces. And then make sure your zipper pull gets on the correct side. There we go. Okay, once you get everything clipped together and you are ready to go, I like to start on one of my side, like this side, so then I hit my corners first, so I get those out of the way. So you're gonna make sure, and then you're gonna slide this in, making sure that you keep your pieces still lined up, and you're going to sew this around at 1/8 of an inch. And then my other hand is on the inside of this. It is setting down onto the gusset, and it's helping to maneuver the bag as I'm going. I'm not pulling it, it's just kind of there as a guideline. As I get to my corner, I want to make sure that as I'm coming in, my pieces are staying lined up. My hand, you can see my thumb wrapping around the gusset. It is helping to help maneuver the bag, and I'm going to be tilting the bag as I go around that corner to help the pieces lay flat, because if you don't keep the pieces laying flat, you have the potential to run in to like a bubble, and it will create a pucker in your vinyl or your exterior of your bag. So making sure all the pieces are still lined up. And then once you get this finished, if you wanted to, you can kind of do a little preview, even though it's only going to be at 1/8 of an inch. You can kind of see, give yourself an idea. Do I have any puckers? Did I get it all right? You can check it out. So you can do that. And then now is going to be time for the binding. All right, so our next step we need to do is grab our binding. And then, because I'm going to be stitching down on this side, so this, our gusset is going to be the side that I can't see. That's the side that you want to be able to put your excess down to. So, because we can see this side, put all of your extra on the side we can't see. So that way when you're going around, even if you're like really close to the line here, you're guaranteeing yourself that you've hit this side. Because if you try to make them even, and if you only cut like 1 inch, sometimes you can be really close to this side and completely miss the other side. So it's just better to be safe than sorry. Push your extra to the side that you can't see as you're going around. And again, I like to cut my binding at 1.25 inches wide. So that's 1.25. And then when I'm done stitching on the binding, I just go around with some duckbill applique scissors and just trim off the excess that I don't need. And it makes it look really nice and pretty. So mine is, I just pulled this from my scrap pile. I am going to be just shy of meeting my end, so I'm going to grab another little scrap piece. And that's the nice part about using the waterproof canvas. I don't have to worry about if I'm running shy or not, or anything like that. So I can just add it on. And then make sure you have a little bit of a somewhat of an overlap. And I'll probably need this for the other side. And even though that these ends don't match, when we trim it all off, we'll never know. Okay, so then go ahead and find a spot somewhere that you can get underneath your machine. And we're going to stitch this all down at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And now that you have that all stitched down, you're going to go ahead and grab your scissors. And then you're just going to go around and trim it all off. Now that our binding is finished on our front, we can go ahead and add our back piece. So we're almost done. I can see that the end is in sight. We're going to line up our top notches. And then we're going to line up our bottom. And then just work your way around, clipping it all together. Okay, and then when you do this one, it is easier if you do have your zipper open. And then don't be afraid to kind of squish your bag a little bit to be able to get it underneath. Once you get the bag underneath and you start stitching, it's definitely a little bit easier. This is kind of sometimes the hardest part, is getting it underneath. And then you're going to stitch around at a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then because I can't get my hand inside the bag, you can see me grabbing and holding on to this. And then I'm going to help, it's going to help me turn the bag and manipulate around the corners. Sorry, trying to keep my hand out of there so you guys can see what I'm doing. See how as I'm going around the corners, I'm turning the bag as I'm going. And then if you need to, lift your foot to help rotate. And then when you get to start to get to the flatter areas, reach inside and kind of push everything down, because sometimes you can get some bubbles or waves from the turn or the going around the curve. And if you don't press those down, sometimes it can cause a pucker because you can sew over the bubbles. So just to kind of help prevent, just reach in and smooth everything out. And then what I'm hitting right here is the D-ring connector. So it's hitting that point. All right, so we got that all sewn together. We're gonna grab our other part of our binding, and we are going to start placing the binding down. And again, I'm putting the excess to the gusset side, since I can see this side of what I'm working on. And then sometimes if you're having trouble going around a corner and getting it to want to lay down, you can kind of get a crease or make a bend, or put your finger there, and then you can kind of make a crease like that. So that will help you get around a corner, and then when you stitch it down, it doesn't look bad. And then plus, being the binding, once the bag is turned out, it's a lot harder to see your binding, so it won't be as noticeable. So I'll demonstrate. When I come into this corner, see, I can keep going straight, and then I can just fold it back down, and I get a nice little crease right there. I'll clip this side down, then you can see it. Oop, as my clip breaks. So I get a crease right there, but then I get it, so it's only one crease going into that corner. So, but if you can't get it to lay flat, that is an option for you to do. Cool. And now that we are all clipped up, we can take this and try to fit this somewhere underneath our sewing machine. And we're going to stitch this around at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, it is, binding is all finished. We can now turn this thing out. Once you get your bag all rolled out and zipped up, at least the back part is finished. It looks awesome. So super excited about that. So now on to the pin board. So I'm gonna go back to my cut table and we'll start working on our pin board. Okay, so for our pin board, this is what we drew for the lining of the ITA pocket after we were all done. So that is the exact size of what our opening is. So we don't want our pin board to be that large because we need to have room for the fabric cover to go over it. So I'm going to make this a 1/2 inch smaller. So I'm just kind of doing a rough draw. And then just kind of work the corners. And then it's okay if if the pin board itself is a little small, it's okay. Because what we're gonna do is we are going to do a test fit first. And then we can know for sure if this is actually gonna work or not. So go ahead and cut out what you just drew. All right, so once you have your paper cut out, we're going to take our Hedwig, we're going to open it up, we're going to open the front zipper pocket for where the pin board is going to go. You're going to have to roll the paper slightly, and so we're going to do the test fit. And then you want to make sure that when you put it in on the inside, your top is going to have to get kind of bent in. And then once it's inside, then you can kind of maneuver the paper around to get it to lay flat. And it'll be a lot easier once this is not an actual piece of paper and it's like cardboard or Peltex. All right, so now that it's in there, my paper covers the window, which is what we want to make sure that we have. We have that covered. There is room on the sides and all around, so that way we have enough room for when we add the cover for it, and everything will fit in there nicely. So we can set Hedwig aside for just the now. Grab your cardboard or your Peltex, either one. We're going to then trace our pattern, our little ITA board, onto our cardboard or Peltex. And then go ahead and cut this out. All right, so this is our pin board, the actual physical board that when you put your pins through, this is what it's going to go through and help like give it some rigidity. And then whatever fabric you want to use, you can use waterproof canvas works for this, or the cotton woven will work for this. And then if you're going to use cotton woven, add SF101 on the back of it. It'll just help reinforce it. And so for this part, you want to make sure that you are cutting this. You're not going to trace this exactly because you need to have a seam allowance for this. So you need to leave some room around the edges down here on the sides. And you want to do 3/8 of an inch larger than your cardboard. So grab like a pencil or something and kind of trace it out. And then when you come into the corners, you can just kind of angle this, so right here to here, and then just kind of follow it along, making marks as you're turning your ruler, keeping one of the 3/8 inch marks in line with the side of your board. And then for down here, you can do the same thing, or you can kind of freehand it. So either way works. Go ahead and cut this out. Now that you have your cover pieces cut out and your pin board, cardboard, or Peltex, on your piece of paper for your pin board itself, make sure to write down that your cover is 3/8 inch larger. That way you don't forget the measurement that you need to be able to make the cover for your pin board if you decide to make more of the Hedwig ITA bags, or if you want to make multiple Mav ITA bags in general. All right. So at this point, you'll add some SF101 to the back of your fabric. If you don't want to add it, you don't have to, but it's just nice to add that on there. And then we'll go over to the sewing machine and we'll finish up the pin board. So I got my pin board covers, and then I got my pin board. So I'm going to put the pin board covers right sides together. I'm going to clip around. I'm going to leave a gap at the bottom, and I'm going to sew around at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, once you got your cover all sewn together, you have your gap at the bottom. You're going to want to take pinking shears and you're going to trim all the way around. All right, go ahead and turn your cover in right side out. Now we're going to grab our cardboard. You're going to have to curl the edges, and you're going to put it inside of your cover. And this is where the Peltex is nice because it doesn't have the colorful side. And then, so when you put it in to your ITA pocket, just make sure that you're putting the cardboard side, not the colorful side, forward, just in case you can see through whatever your fabric choice is. All right. So it's a nice snug fit. And then before we sew that up, we're going to do another test fit. We're going to place it into the pocket. You're going to have to kind of curl it up a little bit. Because if there's any issues, now is the time that we can fix the pin board. Like if you want to make it not quite as tall to make it easier to get in and out, you can do that, which wouldn't be a bad idea actually, but it's really not that bad. And so yeah, there's our test fit of our pin board. It looks fantastic. And again, if you want to make it a little bit shorter, which I think I will actually. So let's take it out. If you're trimming this board, you need to make sure that you trim your paper piece as well. so that way you don't have to do this over and over again if you make multiple Hedwigs or multiple ITA Mavs. Then we're going to turn this out. And so that piece that we just cut off, that's going to help us kind of be our guide a little bit. So we're going to hold it just below the seam allowances and clip it on. This is just a helpful way to be able to know where do I need to stitch now for it. So actually I'm going to go slightly above the stitching that is there. And then so you're just going to follow that just on the inside of that cardboard. And be careful you don't accidentally sew your cardboard down. And then go ahead, grab your pinking shears. We're going to trim off this part now. All right, and then turn this back out. And if you wanted to, you can take it to the iron to press. And then we're going to fold this back in again. So this should be able to fit with no problem, that since we took a little bit off. And then we have those, we can just trim that off. And then at this point, all we need to do is tuck our opening. And if you end up sewing through the cardboard or the Peltex, that's a-okay. And so we're just going to stitch that opening closed at 1/8 of an inch. All right, and that's our pin board. Put that inside of our Hedwig bag. Oh yeah, that goes in a lot easier. Yeah, I'm glad I took a little bit off the top. All right, there's Hedwig. And then we got our pin board for this one. And then I already got some pins in my other one. So I hope you guys like this tutorial of the Hedwig ITA bag from K&A Custom Fabrics. And again, this is part of the Pimp My Mav series. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, let me know.